The Irish Prime Minister pledges humanitarian aid to Ukraine, and a Russian attack on grain warehouses hikes the price of wheat. Vladimir Putin will not travel to a summit in South Africa next month over fears he could be arrested under an ICC warrant.
Italy and France amongst countries sending reinforcements to Greece as strong winds and high temperatures hamper efforts to bring fires under control.
After a storm of objections led by France, the American candidate, set to become one of the EU's top economists, says she won't take the job.
South Korea sends a strong warning to Pyongyang as its president visits the first US nuclear-capable submarine to visit the country in decades.
The Irish Prime Minister visited Kyiv to show his moral support for Ukraine. Leo Varadkar, whose country is not involved in financing the acquisition of arms for Ukraine, has pledged €5 million in humanitarian aid. He's also said that he'll investigate how Irish-made components ended up in Iranian suicide drones used by Russia. Meanwhile, images of Ukrainian grain warehouses in flames after being attacked by Russia have sparked panic in the markets. According to Ukraine, at least 60,000 tons of wheat were destroyed in the overnight attacks in the Odessa region. The price of wheat rose more than 8% in the aftermath of the fires. Russia's President Vladimir Putin this week pulled out of a deal to allow grain to be exported through Black Sea ports and insists it does not make sense to renew the agreement when the West refuses to lift sanctions imposed on Russian agricultural exports. The South African government has confirmed that Russian President Vladimir Putin will not travel to the country next month to attend a BRICS summit. Putin is subject to an arrest warrant by the International Criminal Court, to which South Africa is a signatory. That means that they would be responsible for detaining him should he enter the country. But Moscow has made it clear that any such move would be tantamount to a declaration of war against Russia. BRICS is an acronym for Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, and the group is hailed by some as an alternative to the G7. A spokesman for the South African President, Cyril Ramaphosa, said that the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, will represent Putin at the summit. The Kremlin has denied issuing any warning to Cape Town, but insists that everyone knows what the arrest of the Russian president would mean. Putin is wanted by the ICC in connection with the kidnapping of Ukrainian children.
An explosive mix of strong winds and high temperatures is hampering Greece's efforts to bring large fires in Attica, Corinthia and Rhodes under control. In Attica, the fire has reached Megara, with continuous flare-ups as ground and air fighting forces try to contain the fiery blaze for the third day. In Rhodes, a virgin forest in the centre of the island is burning, with 7 aircraft and hundreds of firefighters operating in the area. In parts of Attica where the fire has passed, all that's left for residents is debris and despair.
Τόσες μέρες καίει, εντάξει δεν υπήρχαν μέσα να πεις να προχωρήσουν στην κατάσβεση εύκολα, την αφήσανε πιστεύω εγώ. Πέρασε με στον οικισμό, κάηκε το σπίτι εδώ κάτω, γίνανε κάποιες ζημιές. Εμείς, εντάξει, δόξα τω Θεώ, δεν έγινε κάτι σοβαρό, αλλά άλλοι συνάνθρωποι μας είναι δύσκολο αυτή τη στιγμή.
Όπως βλέπετε έχουν καεί τα πάντα, έχουν καεί σπίτια. Η πυροσβεστική, ο Δήμος Μάνδρας Ιδηλίας δεν εμφανίστηκε πουθενά. Και βλέπετε αυτή την κατάσταση. Η πυροσβεστική υπηρεσία ήρθε το μεσημέρι προς απόγευμα και ένα ελικόπτερο πέταξε μόνο, το οποίο μία ρήψη.
With weather conditions likely to become even more difficult in the coming days, several countries are sending Greece planes and crews to help battle the blazes.
Fiona Scott-Morton, chosen as the chief economist for competition at the European Commission, has withdrawn following a storm of objections mainly led by France. The EU Commissioner for Competition, Margrethe Vestager, said on Twitter she will accept her decision with regret and full respect for her integrity. Scott-Morton, being non-European as well as her past work as a consultant for the big tech companies such as Apple and Microsoft that the EU Commission has under its radar, were the main sources of criticism. and many MEPs were not convinced by Vestager's answers.
Face à ce recrutement problématique, embarrassant, il était préférable de renoncer. Je crois que c'est une sage décision. Simplement, on avait des questions autour de son recrutement parce que c'est inédit de recruter à la Commission européenne un chief économiste qui ne soit pas européen. Avec ceci, avec cette nationalité américaine, des questions se posaient notamment en matière d'accès aux informations confidentielles et de conflit d'intérêts.
For many, it was Macron himself killing the nomination, as he openly suggested that it would be better to get a great European for the job in the context of his constant philosophy for EU strategic autonomy. For others, this is sending the wrong message to the world's top experts for an introvert approach from Europe's side, despite the fact that they all agree there were legitimate questions raised.
I think her US citizenship played a very important role, and I think it's a stupid argument to take this as the main argument to oppose. I think the EU should attract more experts from different parts of the world, and the message we are sending now is that if you're a US citizen or maybe coming from an Asian country, then you're not welcome.
A few days ago, the major political groups at the European Parliament sent a letter to Vestager expressing dismay over the appointment of Fiona Scott-Morton as chief competition economist, while a group of commissioners also raised concerns.
South Korea's President Yoon Suk-yeol boarding a US nuclear-capable submarine in the southern port city of Busan on Wednesday. It was the first time in more than 4 decades that an American submarine of this type has docked in the country, and the president's visit to it was intended to send a strong message to North Korea.
한미 양국은 앞으로도 핵 협의 그룹 SSBN과 같은 전략 자산의 정례적 전개를 통해 고도화되고 있는 북한의 핵 미사일 위협에 압도적이고 결연히 대응해 나아갈 것입니다.
The US sent the submarine to South Korea after repeated missile tests by the North. Pyongyang fired 2 short-range ballistic missiles into the sea as the vessel docked in what appeared to be a statement of defiance. China, meanwhile, says it's concerned about the escalation of regional tensions that it says undermines the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula.
The Bibby Stockholm barge berthed here on the small island of Portland, just off the Jurassic coast of southern England. It's soon to become home to 500 single adult male asylum seekers, under UK government plans to ease the pressure on the asylum system. Police today sent to listen to local residents' perspectives.
Do you think it makes sense to put migrants on barges?
Potentially, yes. If they've got to be detained somewhere, then yeah, that's got to be done.
It's completely inhumane. I don't understand why we're doing that. I think it's appalling, actually. And yeah, I feel quite ashamed of our country treating people like that.
I obviously feel sorry for them because they've come from a country that obviously has problems, but we have problems in our own country as well at the moment.
We would prefer to see more dignity, more humanity, more respect by housing people and on land.
This barge is an alternative to the current system, a cost-saving measure, as the UK government looks to cut the amount it spends on putting up asylum seekers in hotels. However, the plan is proving harder to implement in other places. Reports that owners of ports at Liverpool and Edinburgh refused to allow 2 boats set to house 1,000 asylum seekers to dock. The boats were returned to their owners. Portland's big barge will be up and running within a few weeks. There are other strongly held local concerns, and they are that this harbour, which is tightly monitored in terms of who has permission to come in and out, will stand to act as a makeshift prison for those on board the barge inside this port.
It's completely barred, it's got a security door, you know, we can't get around the island because we can't get around that part of the port. I don't see how they're essentially free. It just seems a very odd state of affairs, really. I mean, it seems like a prison to me.
A barge 3 stories high and the size of a football pitch, soon to be home to 500 men from around the world. Luke Hanrahan, Euronews, Dorset.
Jonas Vingegaard is edging closer towards retaining his Tour de France crown after outclassing main rival Tadej Pogačar on a grueling stage 17. The Dane powered up the final climb of the Queen stage to open up a lead of more than 7 minutes. Felix Gall launched a devastating attack to win the stage ahead of Britain's Simon Yates, with Pello Bilbao completing the podium. Vingegaard now leads Pogačar by 7 minutes and 35 seconds, with 3 stages to go before Sunday's processional stage to Paris.